Hello everyone. Welcome to Software Testing Help. I'm Sharmila and I'm here to discuss about keyword driven framework. So in this session we will see how to plan and design a basic keyword driven framework. Now before going into the concepts, let us understand what a framework basically is. So I will take it with an example. So here you can see bunch of students attending a certain seminar or lecture. Usually, before a seminar is conducted, they put forward certain prerequisites like your mobile phone should be in switched off mode, students should be present 5 to 10 minutes prior to the session, and you should bring a notepad, pen, etc. So, do you think a person can conduct a session even without following these guidelines? The answer is yes. Yes, it is possible, but it might result in certain interruptions in between which eventually can cause delay in ending the session, and it can also cause confusions among students in understanding the topic because of the interruptions. So you might have negative impacts if you are not following certain guidelines. Okay, now I'm following these guidelines. So what will eventually happen? Will I see positive outcomes? Definitely yes. You will see benefits like increased participation among students, no disruption or interaction in between the session, etc. So, I can define my framework using this example as a set of guidelines which, when followed, gives us beneficial results. Now, how do I define my test automation framework? Again, my test automation framework is a set of guidelines, but it corresponds to the coding standards, the object repository maintenance, test data handling techniques, etc. So any guidelines that gives us positive outcomes, the positive outcome might be reduced script maintenance, code reusability, etc. So anything that gives you positive results by following a set of guidelines, you call it as a framework. And in our case, our guidelines correspond to these coding standards, object repository, etc. Okay, so when I tell guidelines, it doesn't mean that they are rules or protocols. Okay, it is not mandatory for an automation script to have these guidelines, but um, if you're not following a certain set of guidelines, eventually you will not be enjoying these benefits. So the basic idea is a framework gives you lots of benefits, so using it is up to your own applications complexity, or it's up to your that project's need. Okay, now we'll see what a keyword driven framework is. So in the market we have lots of other frameworks also. I'll just give a mention now. They are data driven framework, hybrid driven framework, and keyword driven framework. So these are the three main or the major frameworks used in the market, and now we will start with keyword driven framework. So when we are talking about keyword driven framework, here the keywords are externalized from your main script. So when I tell keywords, they are nothing but the actions that we perform on a web element. So these actions we maintain in a separate library file, and this is where these actions are implemented. And we also have another external resource wherein we design our test cases there. So this is mostly an Excel sheet. Here we design our test cases. The test cases are designed in such a way that each test step corresponds to the actions, which in turn are nothing but the keywords. So here we will make a call to the keywords. We will specify the order in which each action should get executed. So what will a main driver script hold then? I mean, the main driver script will have the logic to read this Excel sheet, and it will also have the other browser and driver configuration properties. So how the um framework works is that your main driver script reads the keywords inside your Excel sheet, and for each keyword it finds its implementation in the library file and executes it in the UI or browser. Okay, as simple as that. Now we will see how the flow of keyword driven framework goes. Now before having a look on the flow, let us understand about the major components of a keyword driven framework. So the first component is a library file. So this file is mostly a class file is a Java file wherein you write the implementation for all your actions. Or in other words, I can tell that I define my keywords inside my library file. Okay. So now my keywords are defined inside my library file. They are ready to be used. So the keywords that are defined in my library file, I will use it in my Excel sheet. So then my next component is my Excel sheet wherein I give a call to those keywords. So depending upon my test case need, I will call that corresponding keyword. Okay. So how is this Excel sheet invoked? It is invoked from my driver script. Now comes my third component. So my driver script has the logic to read this Excel sheet. So it will read each test case and it will read each test step inside the test case. And for each keyword, it will find its corresponding implementation inside the library file and then perform the execution in the browser. So this is how the flow goes. Driver script reads the test cases, which are nothing but they are split in terms of keywords. For each keyword, the implementation is read and executed in the browser. Now here I have an example for a valid login scenario, and these are the test steps for my test case. First is enter the URL and then enter valid username and then entering a valid password. So I'm going to perform this in a normal automation scripting approach, wherein I'm not using any framework, I'm not using any decide pattern. So what do we normally do? We create an object for a driver, and using that object we perform the actions, right? So similarly, I create an object, and for entering the URL I have a function called dot get, so I give a call to that function. And for entering the username I have another function called dot send keys, so using that function I perform the action, and again for entering the password I do the action using dot send keys. So this is a normal approach. Now all the actions here you can see that it lies inside the main test script itself. So what if I'm going to convert this into a keyword driven framework? So in that case, I will not have these actions in the main test script. Rather, I will keep this in a separate library file like this. So I will implement all the actions in a separate library file and I will maintain it like this. Okay. And according to the test case need, I will make a call to those actions using the keywords. Okay. So from this, what are we trying to understand? So just consider this test case verify successful login. You have these test steps. For each test step, you will convert or assign it to a keyword. So before assigning it to a keyword, you should understand what keywords your library function holds. So keywords are nothing but your user defined methods that you can see over here. So you should know what keyword corresponds to what kind of action. So once you have that knowledge, you can assign each test step to a particular keyword, and then you can create your Excel sheet template like this. So once this template is created, your driver script, which is your main script that reads your Excel sheet, will perform the execution in whatever order you have specified here, and that implementation will be read from your library file and the execution begins. Now to put it in a nutshell, for each test case you analyze the test steps, and for each test step you assign a keyword. So this keyword you assign only when you have the knowledge of all the keywords inside your library file, and then for each keyword the implementation is read over here and the execution is done. So here your driver script will first have a look on your Excel sheet, and whatever you have specified in your Excel sheet, those actions will be performed depending upon the implementation inside your library file. Okay, so that is how a keyword driven framework works, as simple as that. I hope you got an idea of how a keyword driven framework works. So you are externalizing all your keywords in a separate Excel sheet, and you're implementing the keywords and maintaining it in a separate Java file, and then your driver script just makes a call to this Excel sheet and automatically the execution happens. Okay. Now let us take a simple example and start creating a keyword driven framework. So before creating a keyword driven framework, we should understand the components. So we already saw these components part by part in the previous slides. Now we will start with first component, called function library. So this is where we define all our actions. So my example is, this is my application which is having two test cases. Normally, when you design a framework, you will definitely have minimum of 50 test cases. So I'm just taking a simple example with two test cases. Um, so first you should analyze your test steps, and you should come to a conclusion of what kind of actions your entire application works around. So here I can see that I have an enter URL, I have a wait command. Again, I'm having an enter URL, I'm having entering password, entering username. Okay, so now I have an idea of all the commands that comes into picture for this application. So now I'm going to create the keywords for that. So here I have a project called sample KDF, and inside a package called automation.sample KDF, I have my library Java file. This is going to be my library file wherein I'll implement all the actions. So I just named it as keywords. I gave a class name called keywords. So now I've analyzed my test cases. So I'm first creating a method for entering the URL. So I'm creating a method saying public void enter URL. This is just a user defined method name. And then here, using the driver, we always create an object for the driver, and using the driver we access the methods inside it. So dot get is the method, and I need to pass the URL over here. So in this class, I'm not initiating the driver, rather I will get the driver instance from the user. So whenever user makes a call or gives a call to this method called enter URL, he will pass the driver's instance as a parameter. Also, I'm getting this URL from the user. So that also I'm passing it as a parameter. So that URL I'm in turn assigning it inside the function driver.get. Okay, so now I have created a keyword called enter URL. Similarly, let me create another keyword. I will create another keyword for type action. So this is my user defined function for type, and here I will say driver.find element by any locator. Let us be XPath. So for now I'm just leaving this empty. Dot send keys is my action, and here I need to pass some data. Okay, so this element I need to generalize it, because this method called type I can use for any element. So what I'll do is I'll get the elements reference from the user. So I'll get the web element from the user, and I'll also get the data that I'm going to pass, that is the typing data, also from the user. So instead of having driver.find element, I will pass this element reference itself over here, and here I will pass the test data. Okay, this is the test data. So now I have my library function ready with two keywords. One is enter URL, another one is my type. So here my functional library component is ready. Next I need to create an Excel sheet and specify what keywords I have implemented in my library file. So this component is only for understanding purpose, because mostly the framework will be used by non-technical people. So you just specify the keyword name and what that keyword does. So this enters data in address bar or URL in address bar. So like that you can just give description, so that user just reads this particular page and he will come to an understanding of what your library function has actions. Okay, so you can also include another action type, because you have type also over here, and you can add the description for it. Okay, so now my Excel sheet is ready with its keywords. So my second component also is done. Next I need to create my Excel sheet template wherein I will design my test cases here. So this is the most important part. So here these are my test cases here, and my template, I'm going to split my template into sheets. For one test case I will take one sheet. So I'm just splitting it into test case 1 as first sheet, test case 2 as second sheet, and I'm having test steps inside each test case. Okay, so I will tell why I have the other object name, locator type, test data, assertion type and all. So first let's start with creating the test steps. So let's read the second test case. It says enter URL. That is my first test step. So for this test step, I should recognize my corresponding keyword. So for entering the URL, I have a keyword called enter URL. My description says this enters the URL in address bar. So what I'll do is I'll use this inside my test step. So here I'll specify enter URL And now this particular test case for entering the URL, it is not dependent. It's not depending on any object. It just enters the URL in the address bar. So I'm leaving the other object name, locator type, test data, assertion type as empty. Okay. So now let's go with the second step. Second step says enter valid username. So for entering the valid username, I will go to my keyword and see which matches this corresponding test step. So this is my keywords list for entering the valid username. So that is nothing but the type action. So types in test data. So I will use the keyword called type. So I will just say type over here, and here I will specify the XPath like this. And then I will tell that the locator type is my XPath, and the data that I'm passing, that is the valid username, I will specify it here. Okay, so next is enter valid password. So again, I will call my test step with a keyword called type, and here I'll just show you another implementation of using the object name. I can write the object name like this, and this reference I can put it in another object repository file likewise, wherein I can give my object name and the object value. So this will be read from my main driver script. My driver script will recognize this object name and then go to the object repository and look for its corresponding value and recognize a particular element. So this logic will be in my driver script. So I'm just giving you another example of um, calling your object from another object repository. And here you can just specify either XPath or ID, whatever identification you're using, and then pass your password value. Okay. So this is how you create a template for your particular test case. So now I have created test steps. I have assigned each test step with corresponding keyword. And now my template is ready. So we saw how our template got ready. So object repository is another component wherein I showed you an example how you can maintain an object repository. So this is not a very mandatory component, but yes, you can use an separate object repository also. And next comes your main driver script. So here is where you write the logic which reads your Excel sheet. So in my case, this is my test case template. I have my test case 1, test case 2, and then I have my list of keywords. So my point of interaction will lie inside this Excel sheet only. So whatever I specify in my Excel sheet will be read, and its corresponding implementation will be taken from my library file, and the execution will happen. So that uh, action of reading my Excel sheet and iterating across each test step and test case, that logic is what we write in our main driver script. Okay, so this we will see in detail in the next session. So now you just have an understanding that first you should have a library file created with keywords, and for each keyword that you have created, you just have a description in another Excel sheet so that user will know what your library file contains. And then you create a template for your test cases using the keywords, and you can also maintain an object repository for the objects that you're going to interact with separately. And then once everything is done, you can create your test case driver script, which is your main script that reads your Excel sheet. It is nothing but your logic that reads the Excel sheet. Okay, so I hope you got an understanding of how your keyword driven framework works. We will meet in the next session and see in detail with some more examples on how this framework actually gets implemented. Thank you.